Hello, I'm Arik Korman, Communications Director at League of Education Voters, and a parent of a 5th grade son in the public school system. In case you're not familiar with us, League of Education Voters is a statewide nonprofit working with families, educators, and leaders to build a brighter future for every Washington student. Our website is educationvoters.org. Our vision is that every student in Washington state has access to an excellent public education that provides an equal opportunity for success. Welcome to our free online webinar series, Lunchtime Webinars. We started this series 6 years ago to share information and build knowledge on important and timely issues. Today's webinar is about teaching our kids during the coronavirus crisis. And we are honored to have 2020 Washington State Teacher of the Year, Amy Campbell, with us. Many parents across Washington state are trying to do coronavirus triple duty, and I'm one of them, working, parenting, and teaching from home. Also, educators across the state are scrambling to find effective ways to engage students during this unprecedented time. Amy will share how she is supporting students and parents, and will answer your questions. Amy is a special education teacher, and she is finding ways to use accommodations and strategies that support students with disabilities in the classroom so that they can engage in remote learning. These strategies are useful for all students. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. You'll notice a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. This is a space for you to submit questions to us. As always, feel free to send any feedback about the webinar quality to us on the chat function or at info@educationvoters.org. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, Arik. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Great.
Uh-oh, I know that person. Okay, let me adjust one more thing. You should have closed captioning now.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, I have us too. This is perfect. Thank you, Arik. Thank you, League of Education Voters. And thank you for participants today, parents, caregivers, general and special education teachers, and paraprofessionals and support staff. Thank you, leaders, anyone who's participating now to support continuous learning for all of our students. I wanted to start this conversation today the same way we start school at Helen Ballard, where I work every day. I've been teaching special education for 12 years. And in the school where I work, we like to have this shared experience that reinforces our beliefs about learning and what we can do. And we invite students to participate every day. So if you want to join me today in saying the Pledge of Allegiance and the Helen Ballard Pledge, then go ahead and remove your hat and put your hand over your heart. And there's a flag in the background. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now go ahead and raise your right hand, and I've written the Helen Ballard Pledge right there for you to be able to see. I will do my best to be my best. I will be responsible, respectful, and safe. Together we can build self-esteem. At Helen Ballard, we are a community of learners. We can learn, we will learn. And this is such an important message for me, and it brought me in my career to my belief, really. It reinforces my belief, really, that all children can learn. It's up to us to find the way to do it. And that celebration, that excitement about overcoming barriers, I think that's what made me brought me the spotlight of 2020 Washington State Teacher of the Year. And in that role, I've gotten the chance to work with the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, which is the Ed Department in Washington, as a partner in their inclusionary practice professional development project. And as part of that, I've gotten to travel around and do professional development for leaders and general education teachers, special education teachers, and paraprofessionals, how we can work together to move inclusion forward. And the conversations I had in those presentations and as a special education teacher around inclusion are the conversations of our moment, of this time. I was talking about then and now civil rights, seeing access and assets and abilities and potential in our students, how we can overcome barriers to promote learning, and how special education in the state of Washington is a service and not a place, and how all our children can learn, we just need to find the ways. And one analogy that I love to give during those presentations is around my student Micah. And Micah has a lot of barriers to access. Micah has cerebral palsy, and so he's functionally a quadriplegic. And he has limited vision and is nonverbal. But rather than focusing on what he can't do, his family has found ways of overcoming these barriers. And Micah runs marathons. And our schools, and now continuous learning in the country, in the world, they're like the marathon course. Students' access to materials, their abilities, their effort, and other obligations are going to put us all at different places on this course as we're learning and moving together towards the goals. And as teachers, we get the opportunity to see the potential in our students as learners. And really, if we can believe, and we do believe as teachers that all our children can learn, we just need to be able to figure out ways to help them overcome these barriers. And so, because I believe all students can learn, I needed to find a way when coronavirus hit to continue learning and instruction for my students. And my students have different barriers probably than your children and your students, but a lot of similar. And I think a lot of the strategies I'm thinking about, and a lot of the factors that I'm holding close to my heart as I'm designing activities and engagement, I think that they're things that will resonate with you too. So my students left on March 13th. They walked out of their classrooms, rolled out in wheelchairs for the last time, and this in March. And on March 14th, I walked back into that empty school and I made YouTube videos of myself teaching, because on March 16th, the buses weren't coming for kids. And so the instructional opportunities I wanted to provide focused on, yes, providing direct instruction on specific skills, but also how can I demonstrate for families how to integrate occupational therapy or speech practice for students into what they're doing? How can I model instructional and behavioral supports that work for kids in school that are going to work for families at home? And how do I open the door to my classroom to demystify teaching for people? And ultimately, how do I connect with students and how do I connect with families? Because that first piece, even if you're not making YouTube videos, if whatever you're sending home, the connection is key. And so parents, I want us to be able to provide you with a reassurance. And I hear a lot of people talking about grace, and absolutely grace, but I want you to know no judgment, that you are enough. And I don't know what barriers everyone is up against, but as I have conversations with parents all over this country, I know that this is a time of loss, of respite providers, of caregivers, of family members, and of support. And I want you to know, and I think our teams of teachers and staff need to continue to reiterate that you are not recreating school in your home. I brought home my classroom and I cannot recreate school in my home. It is so hard. You can't do that. But I want you to know we do have a plan. And all of us are at different places in this planning process, but we are developing a plan for service delivery. And we do have some available resources. So schools, make sure you're sharing where your planning is. Make sure you're sharing that you are planning. And make sure you're sharing specifically what resources you have. Because I think parents don't always know what to ask for. And I don't think people in crisis even know what would help them. So parents, we are still your team. And we all have this really unique shared experience where your children were in our classrooms for 70% of this school year. And so I know a lot about what they know and how they learn. And so being able to connect and collaborate with you, I think we're going to be able to do a lot of amazing things moving kids forward. And I know all of us, teachers, administrators, parents, we need to make sure we're providing personal connections for kids across a variety of settings, not just teachers connecting, but peers connecting with other peers, because this is a lonely time for everyone, but especially students with disabilities who often depend on school time to see and talk to other people. We are more isolated now than ever. But I have super good news. And this is the part that gives me so much hope. And I want it to fill you with hope too. In the 70s, a researcher, Albert Bandura, did a lot of research around the idea of collective efficacy. And collective efficacy, it applies across a broad number of settings, but it's the idea that when a team of individuals share the belief that through their unified efforts, they can overcome challenges and produce intended results, we are actually more effective. And this, a researcher, John Hattie, investigated collective efficacy in our schools. And what he found is one of the best ways we can improve outcomes for students is through teacher collective efficacy, staff collective efficacy. And so that just refers to the idea that our shared belief, that our collective action, all of us working together, we can actually improve outcomes for disengaged and disadvantaged students is powerful. And so what this means in my school at Helen Ballard is, as we're looking at inclusion and access and experience for students, students are not yours, they're not mine, they're ours. And during the Corona crisis, that ours extends into our homes. And so teachers, we need to believe we can teach and our kids can learn. And we also need to believe that our parents and our caregivers and our students can achieve, like that we can all do this together. And parents, I believe in you. We can do this. I know that we're going to have dark days. I am not promoting blind optimism by any stretch of the imagination, but I am suggesting that we allow ourselves to have hope. Because just believing in each other, we can improve outcomes for our students. We can improve our continuous learning situation. And we all have a hand in moving this forward. So a critical piece of this, if we are going to provide continuous learning for our students in an alternate setting outside of our classroom, and we're going to expect parents and caregivers to be able to support us in this, that we're going to work together, is that we need to make sure we share what works in our classrooms. And that is so critical. Because And the things I've got on the screen right now, these are things that work for students who have disabilities to improve access to content, to improve access to learning in our classrooms, but they will improve learning for everyone, and especially our children who are in crisis. Because right now, I am hearing about behaviors that are unimaginable, and I want you all to know it is not bad parenting. It is not parenting. Our children are having trauma response. They're responding to isolation. They're responding to just different. And the stress, the anxiety, and the fear in our homes, in our communities, on the news, all of this is going to make the learning difficult when we know our children are having trouble organizing their own life. So the way that I've addressed providing what I'm about to share with you is in my videos, modeling for parents how I use these strategies, and then outlining in emails a narrative of how we can implement these learning strategies at home. And it's going to support students across the board until the end of time. So if we can get this to parents, I think it's going to increase access forever. The first is accommodations and modifications, and these are outlined in IEPs, but these same strategies are available at, you could do a Google search. I didn't get very many on here. Google accommodations in education, and you're going to get a lot of great ideas for improving access and overcoming barriers. One of my favorite things to video model right now is sensory strategies, because whether you believe it, parents or not, the kids sometimes bounce off the walls in our classrooms, and we have ways that we mitigate this through different kinds of sensory breaks, bouncing on yoga balls, practicing breathing, taking a walk, and doing maybe a dance video. I would love to see us normalize taking a break right in the middle of instruction to be able to get our sensory needs met. Mm-hmm. Behavioral strategies, and hopefully teachers who are watching are thinking, oh yeah, we just do this. But parents, if you've never been given opportunity to understand how to create visuals and choice boards, token boards, and use timers and positive behavior supports in your homes, then you're not playing with the same cards we are. Like, I want to be able to make sure you have the resources that are going to support learners. And finally, this is the one that's near and dear to my heart right now, because I have heard over the last year or more how in the state of Washington, parents, teachers, administrators are talking to the legislator. How do we get funding around increasing social emotional learning in our schools? Because we know it improves learning outcomes for students. And during a crisis, how do we get the techniques and the strategies for supporting social emotional needs to our parents? This has been a great video I've made. Me demonstrating emotions, but how do we help parents understand to be able to learn about sharing, responding, and validating emotions with their students? And for teachers, this is critical for me and you, administrators. The collaboration and the coordination that happened immediately following us leaving our classrooms was sort of a silver lining for me as I felt my world fall apart. Being able to work with my gen ed colleagues, my job-alike peers, my administrators, to develop, divide, and distribute work, to define goals and limit volume, I would encourage you to keep collaborating. Being able to work with my therapeutic staff to understand what can I do to help parents see how to implement naturalistically the therapy their kids are getting at school. And most important is, right now I feel resilient, but not all of my colleagues are. And this collaboration is where we are learning to hold each other up, because maybe next week I'm not in this place. And I have a group, a cohort of people who can sustain me. And parents, this is for you too, and administrators, put yourself in this loop, because there's no expectation during a crisis for all of us to be resilient every single day. Grace is knowing that you will have some bad days, and that's okay. And another part of this is creating the networks so the system doesn't fall apart when we each take our bad day. And this is also great. 3 weeks, I have had way too much screen time, but it's an explosion in professional development for all of us, as in real time on my social media, I'm getting all kinds of Twitter wisdom about what's happening right now all over the world. And I've been reading amazing ideas and insights from my colleagues here in Camas, all across the country, discussing about things that are reflecting on things that are so relevant right in this moment. Blogs from teachers, blogs from parents, blogs from administrators. And I love, this is a blog by my friend and colleague, Mark Gardner, and it's titled No Right Answer. And it resonated with me that right now we're searching for answers and we're finding so much information. So keep looking. And finally, professional conversation. This is a picture of the 54 state teachers of the year. And I can tell you what, I did not expect, even just a month ago, for our conversations to be centered on how do we move learning out of our classrooms. But now, these are the conversations of our time. And so I want to empower all of you caregivers and parents, administrators and teachers and students to continue to read about what's happening. Continue to write about what you're experiencing. Make sure you reflect on the past, the present, and where we're going. And ask questions of yourself and the system. And I think all of us together get a really neat opportunity to model for students how messy learning is and how this is a journey we're all on together. And finally, I want to encourage you, as desperate as this moment is and how much we all want it to pass, that the discussions we're having now around equity and access, they need to continue to happen, because this is a call to action right now for innovation to remove barriers for learning. Right now, teachers, parents, administrators, anyone who's watching, we have the opportunity to build each child in this country their own Orange Crush wheelchair. And we have the opportunity to believe in each other, that we can push that wheelchair and move every child a little farther down the marathon course. We could celebrate that together, and we need to, because the world is watching. And this is what teachers do, and we're teachers. So that's my heart, that's what I have. And now I'm going to share a little bit of a video that I made for my family. It's a YouTube video where, let me exit this, where I'm showing the strategies, and let's see if we can get it going. And so a lot of those things on the strategy page, you'll see them in this video.
Today's art project is super fun and very simple. I found all the materials for this art project in my scrap paper bin. So you probably have some things you could be creative with at home and maybe make a similar project. Let's work together. I'm going to put the project right up here where you can see it. I think you're going to be able to see the art project while we work. Let's review our schedule. It's always good to know what we're going to be working on. So, I think I got to stay down. First, we're going to bounce on the ball. We're going to get some sensory time. I'll set a timer. We'll bounce and get the wiggles out. And once our body is all refocused, then we'll be able to do some art project, some hard work. And if you get all your work done, you can choose one of these great free choices for when you're finished. First bounce, then work, then one of these great free choice options. A game, foam blocks, the funny llama toy that you like so much. I should bring him over. He's funny.
The llama
Maybe we'll work for the
another
iPad
video.
today. Screen time might be relaxing. I will put that on your schedule. Here's the iPad. Now, I want you to notice I've got the iPad ready for you to work for. And I'm going to put that out here so you can see it. This isn't the iPad we're going to use for communication. This is an iPad for playing, and it is very fun. So, let's start out with the bounce. Remember, if during the day you need to bounce, you can always ask on your iPad for action, thing, oh dear. It takes Mrs. Campbell a second to find.
Bounce.
Bounce. You can always ask to bounce. Let's get our bounce started.
So you can see, and I do go into the bouncing, which has been a big hit. But you can see that it's not fancy. It's all the things that I want my kids to have for comfort. And I get a chance to showcase the strategies that I want to outline for parents that I'm using that are not fancy, that will help support continuous learning in their homes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amy. That was amazing. We have about 10 minutes for questions. And so for you who are listening, just type your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and no question is too basic. So we've got probably about 10 minutes. We could probably go a little longer, Amy, if you've got time. First question that I did get was, are you going to be sharing your presentation? And I would imagine that when you send me the PowerPoint, I'll go ahead and post it on our website, and we will send it out in a follow-up email. So yes, you will get the slides in this presentation. And Amy, when you send that to me, if you could also send the link to your YouTube channel, then that way everyone can watch the video that you just showed along with other ones just like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So the first question I have is this. What are the most common ways you are connecting with families, especially families without technology?
Okay. This is actually interesting because the families who I'm serving do actually have cell phone service, but some of my staff who I work with don't have cell phone service in their homes. And so it's been a work in progress as we figure out how to keep the communication fluid and in real time. And like I said, I've spent 70% of the school year getting to know my families. So when this hit, I knew which families would be able to respond to email, and I knew which families would need a direct phone call, and I know which families have better access to be able to watch YouTube videos. So I had sort of that experience, but in our district, we have families who will be receiving paper mailings. And we also have students who are significantly impacted right now during this crisis, who have to get information passed to them, like during a meal drop or exchange. If the bus comes by to drop off meals, then they'll receive information on paper. Does that answer the question? A lot of variety, but thank goodness we had some opportunity to get to know our families leading up to this. So hopefully that's helped you too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. I just had a question, which is, What is your process for recording your videos?
Oh, that's so embarrassing. I'm going to show you. Hold on. Leading up to this adventure, I do a lot of work with our SLP and modeling alternative augmentative communication. So I bought a new iPad, and on March 14th, I turned it on myself. So I just hit record and propped it up, and I talked to the camera, and I just picture my students on the other side. Nothing fancy. I created a YouTube channel, very quick and easy. If you Google how to make a YouTube channel, it'll walk you through it. It's probably too easy. We can all be on YouTube together.
Great, thank you very much. All right, next question. It says, I'm on the school committee in my town. Other towns seem to be offering more robust online learning, and some in our town are beginning to complain. I've tried to explain that we are taking a more measured approach so we can make sure to accommodate our many special education and English language learner students, as well as those who do not have technology. Apologies for the long question, but how can we help the parents of those who seem to have the most understand this approach?
Well, first of all, I think that a measured approach is a great approach because more isn't always more. Just, I'm going to throw that out there to begin with. And a lot of time with technology, what I'm seeing happen is we're getting access to a lot of apps, we're getting access to a lot of content, but not all of it is geared towards creating and geared towards really engaging students in learning. So I think there is going to be an amount of vetting that's happening where we need to make sure our technology isn't just throwing apps at kids for rote reciting and low-level engagement. Of course, it's entertaining, but it isn't always engaging learning opportunity. And I think the same is as we're trying to provide packets of information, resources, ideas to families, the content we provide in our paper products can be just as I think there's opportunity for them to be as enriching and engaging as some of our less carefully vetted electronic content. Because just throwing an app at a child is not engaging them in learning, just like just throwing a worksheet isn't. So if we're careful in what we're creating across all settings, then we have the opportunity to have assignments that ask students to generate, to build, to play, to look, to learn, to dig in the mud. It doesn't have to be tracing on paper, and we don't need to see, and we don't need to think that just access to online is better just by virtue of being technology, because we've had engaging and enriching paper and pencil assignments in our brick and mortar schools for many, many years.
How do you document IEP implementation in the home?
Okay, I turned my volume way down. I hope that turning my volume up doesn't mess with this. Say the question one more time.
Sure. How do you document IEP or individualized education plan implementation in the home?
Oh, well, I would say parents, I don't need you necessarily. If that's a parent, how do you do it? Parents don't need to be providing documentation, but I do try and I'm trying to make sure that the content I'm providing around is focused on the IEP goals, and that I'm documenting on a spreadsheet when I am providing access to that content to parents. So if the goal, I have students obviously with math goals and accommodations related to using talking calculators or using manipulatives or alternative forms of indicating answers. And so I've made videos showcasing those math skills for parents, and hopefully they'll be able to watch the videos with kids maybe multiple times so that they can do different math sessions and have different types of video content. And then I just document that I've sent the content and that we've had contact, and parents know that they have that open line of communication with me about how they can deliver. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep moving forward, and I'll be developing new ways of connecting with parents, hopefully through Zoom conferencing or things like that, where I can actually have more interaction with parents, even though I'm aware that's not going to be an option for some families.
Great, thank you. All right, here's a question. What would you advise that families do where the access issue isn't so much the complexity versus simplicity of tasks, but time? What should we or could we expect from general ed and special ed teacher collaboration in terms of accessibility and level of engagement with general education materials?
So I've been working a lot with my general education teachers, and I actually have a co-teacher right now because I'm on leave. So she's been doing an amazing job. The two of us have divide and conquer. But making sure that we have that three-way communication for each family whose children need specially designed instruction or accommodations and modifications to access the gen ed piece, so there's an understanding of where Mrs. Campbell is going to be providing some math content, and the gen ed teacher is going to post the assignment in Google Classroom with an expectation that Mrs. Campbell will respond that math content has been delivered. And so I do have one family who has, they have multiple students who experience disability. And that was a question she brought up right away. And what we were able to do was have a Zoom meeting with all her special SDI providers to talk about how we would create these triangles of interface between special ed and general ed and parent to make sure the levels were acceptable, that she wasn't overwhelmed, and that we would understand that she wasn't trying nothing, that she was working, and also that we could start to provide content that maybe met her needs across, for all her learners across a variety of spectrums. So really, I hate to even say this, specially designed instruction and individualized education is very unique per each student. We shouldn't be thinking about forms and formulas and one size fits all. And that conversation needs to really continue to happen during COVID, because what works for one family is not going to work for another. But please, parents, tell us what works for you and how we can help you. And that makes teachers feel good when we get when a parent emails me and said, help, this is too much, or what do you actually want me to do? Then I can help solve that problem. That feels attainable to me.
Great, thank you. We got time for about 4 more questions, I'd say, if that's okay with you, Amy.
Yeah.
All right, so I am a kindergarten teacher and curious about how you plan to assess student learning. I just can't wrap my brain around it when most of my assessment is done one-on-one.
Right. This is hard, and I want you to follow your district's lead, because in Washington, obviously, we have the regulations from OSPI, and then the locals are getting an opportunity to see what is going to be efficient and effective for their community and their resources. So anything I say, I don't want it to preempt, obviously, what your districts are asking you to do, what your leadership is asking you to do. I plan to check in with families, and I plan to have a lot of grace around assessment, because I think what we know about learning and about trauma and about our brains right now, think about your brain. We are all stressed out, and our children are stressed out. And so our assessments might not be the best indication even of their skill in that moment. And so I want to be able to check in with children and make sure they're getting access, that they're learning and they're engaged and they're creating and feeling confident and cared for and connected. But I'm going to wait till assess until things have calmed down, because frankly, I tried to put dish soap in the coffee maker yesterday, and I lost my toothbrush like 2 nights ago, and I came all the way out to Camas the other day without my purse. Do not assess me in this moment. This is not me. And And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we need to be cautious. I think we're doing a lot more learning and teaching than we know, and I think we'll find that out in September.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Okay, are you teaching any live lessons or are they all recorded?
um, well, so far all recorded, but I want to figure out how to go live for my students. And you know that the part about collaboration, one of the collaborations I did with a Java-like peer is my middle school teacher who does a job similar to mine, took on the responsibility of synchronous instruction. And so as I keep creating videos that his students, who were my students previously, can keep using, he's taken on the exciting opportunity of providing synchronous activities that we can all engage in. So I will be joining as a co-teacher in his live activities with all of our students. So yes, I do plan to create some live teaching moments. I have divided and conquered with my Java-like peers so that we can all do something and create sort of a variety of things our parents can pick from. What works for your life? Take Mr. Charles' dance party and maybe Mrs. Campbell's YouTube, and then Mrs. Ward's bingo outdoor excitement. And so we have more variety and more access for families without all of us having to do everything.
Great, thank you. So how do we as an IEP case manager do progress reports if the state of Washington keeps schools closed?
That is a question for Glenna and Tanya at OSPI. No. Wow, that is an interesting question. And hopefully, so we just did our progress notes, and I'm going to be using that last progress monitoring data I have to write the IEPs that I have coming up. And then OSPI and special education has expressed a lot of grace for teachers and programming. I don't want to minimize students who have disabilities access to free and appropriate public education, but I do not also want to create a situation where we are trying to do assessment that is not an accurate representation of what our students can produce. So I would be hesitant. A lot of our students, we have accommodations in our IEPs for alternative test settings because we know they're already anxious for testing. Let's see what special education and OSPI has to say. Let's see what our districts have to say. And let's give this a few weeks to see what our kids are doing.
Great. Okay, last question I have is, if parents and educators have questions for you that didn't get answered today, is there a way they can reach out to you to connect, to get their questions and concerns heard by you?
Yeah. So I am on Twitter, and you can my direct message lines are open. I would obviously prefer a direct message than a tweet right on my page. But we may that, so hopefully that would be one way, but you can also email me at, and Arik, why don't you just include my WA Teacher of the Year 2020 at Gmail, and people can email my 2020 Gmail account and I will respond.
All right, great. And so your Twitter handle is?
At _Mrs. Campbell.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. And one question that I'll answer really fast is, what did you use for live captioning during your presentation? And that was Google Slides.
You should be doing this. This is amazing. So go in, you're going to have a Google slideshow if you're making Google Slides. And I'm sure there's a way. You can add closed captioning on Zoom, but I don't want to duplicate the closed captioning with the slides and the Zoom, because that would be disorienting. But you start your presentation, share your screen, start your presentation, and then use Control-Shift-C, and you have closed captioning. It's
awesome. Magic. That was really cool. Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions. League of Education Voters also is aggregating resources available in communities across Washington state to help us get through this difficult time. You will find our COVID-19 resources page on our website, educationvoters.org. There will also be a recording of this webinar at the website, educationvoters.org. You just click on events and then lunchtime webinars, previous webinars, and it'll be there for all time. I'm also going to send that out in a follow-up email. I am super excited about our next webinar, and that is on Tuesday, April 14th. It will be a gathering of Washington Teachers of the Year on the state of education during COVID-19. We are honored to have Amy Campbell back with us again, Teacher of the Year from 2020. We have Robert Hand, the Teacher of the Year from 2019 from the Mount Vernon School District. We have Mandy Manning from 2018, the Teacher of the Year from Spokane, as well as the 2018 National Teacher of the Year. We have Camille Jones from 2017 from the Quincy School District, and Lyon Terry from 2015 in the Seattle School District. He's now with Highline. They will share what they're hearing from students, parents, and colleagues in their community. They'll share insights on education during COVID-19, and Amy, we heard so many great ones today from you. And we will answer your questions. This will take place again on Tuesday, April 14th. We're going to have it at a special time of 3:30 in the afternoon so that all the teachers could attend. You can register by visiting our website, educationvoters.org, clicking on events, and then lunchtime webinars. I'll have that link up later today. And I will send you the registration link in the follow-up email to this. Thank you again for each of you for joining us today. If you have additional questions or comments, please send them to Arik, spelled A-R-I-K, at educationvoters.org. Feel free to share this recording with friends and colleagues. And Amy, thank you for sharing the presentation slides. I'll make that part of that follow-up email. It will be on our website, and you are welcome to share that with your friends and colleagues as well. If you want to learn more about League of Education Voters or support our work, please visit our website, educationvoters.org. Thank you again for attending. Each one of us has the right to feel safe and valued. We hope you will join us at future webinars. Amy, thank you, and thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me.